Welcome to the Nerd Party.
Welcome to Great Shot Kid, the podcast on the Nerd Party Network that looks at the technical and motivational and process-related questions having to do with film and filmmakers, especially when they're concerned with a galaxy far, far away. I'm one of your hosts, John.
And I'm Mike.
And this week, we have a very intriguing topic for you. Before we get to it, of course, you can reach us at thenerdparty.com/contact. And at thenerdparty.com, you can find all of the interesting shows that are on the Nerd Party, everything from Filibuster, which is our general topic show, over to our Doctor Who show, Time and Space, Aggressive Negotiations, Nerd Nuptial. You want it, we've got it. Come on over to the Nerd Party. And, of course, find us on Facebook at facebook.com/thenerdparty and have them scrape your data, while you can go over to Twitter and go to @JoinNerdParty and tweet us there. And over on Instagram, of course, it's the Nerd Party. In all of those cases, please use the hashtag GreatShotKid so that we know that you're talking to us, about us, or for us. Now, all of that out of the way, Mike. I know that you had a question for me, so I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to open the floor and let you ask that question.
Okay, well, this is inspired by our Nerd Party Slack channel, which I guess it's there for planning purposes, but more than anything, we use it to debate movies, movie news, and, we have some spirited debates. They're usually about, dumb things like, is the Spawn cartoon better than the Spawn live-action film, or, is Dark Angel James Cameron's masterpiece, or whatever we're talking about.
Yeah.
But occasionally we get on the topic of Star Wars, and this topic came up yesterday in relation to some news regarding Rian Johnson and his plan, I guess you could say, for his own personal Star Wars trilogy. And that bit of news spawned a debate which was rather interesting, and it got me thinking about what it is that we want out of these new Star Wars movies, and more specifically what we want out of the creators of these new Star Wars movies. Because I think that, we saw this divide with Last Jedi, right? Where there were people who loved it, like me, and people who didn't really like it, like you, right?
Now, see, the thing is, I want to make sure that we don't just talk in generalities there. By your own admission, on the second viewing, you went to questioning whether you actually liked it. And then it was on the third viewing after you, had some interpretation time where you fully embraced it. You fully embraced it as a masterpiece. I think that because my criticisms have been very out there, I have not hidden them at any point, there's a misconception. I gave the movie, if you want to put it on a rating scale, a 3 out of 5. Average movie score. I wasn't upset that I saw it. I wasn't in love with it. There were things that I thought really worked, things I didn't. So it's not that I didn't like it. It's that I liked it, but I have been free with my criticism of it, as I think I'm free with my criticism of anything else.
Okay, but let's just go down the list just to give people an idea of, where it falls in your overall rankings. Let's give your star ratings, and I'll give mine too, for every single Star Wars movie, starting with Star Wars Episode 4, A New Hope.
Yeah.
What would you give it?
Gosh, honestly, I don't typically give them star ratings.
I know. So, but let's do this. Let's do this.
Okay.
You're on Letterboxd. You just watched Star Wars Episode 4, A New Hope.
Yes.
You got to fill in your entry. What do you give A New Hope?
5 stars.
Okay, I'd probably give it 5 stars too. What about Empire?
I would give Empire 5 stars.
Me too. What about Jedi?
5 stars.
Me too. What about Episode 1?
Episode 1, 4.5 stars.
Okay, I'd probably give it 4, but that's the nostalgia talking. If I'm being completely honest with myself, it's a 3-star movie.
Interesting.
What about Attack of the Clones?
Attack of the Clones, I give a solid 4, 4.5, depending on my mood.
Okay, it's probably 4 for me as well. And Revenge of the Sith,
100 stars.
and I would probably give it like 4 stars. I think I gave it on my last viewing.
Okay.
My opinion of it has definitely declined since originally seeing it, but I still think it's very good. Okay, and then Clone Wars.
Clone Wars, I gave a solid 3.5.
Okay, I give that 3.
Okay.
And I think I'm being generous, to be honest.
It could easily be negotiated up to a 4 just because it's placed within, but as a standalone, I think it's a 3.5.
Okay, all right. And then Episode 7.
Episode 7, 4.
Okay, I give it 5. Rogue One.
Rogue One's a toughie. Rogue One is probably 3.5 if I'm brutally honest with myself. A 4 if I kind of look at my phone for the first 35 minutes and then plug back in right around Forrest Whitaker showing up on Jeddah.
Okay, I give it a 4 for now, but it definitely has the potential to bump up to 5 at some point down the line. And then we have Last Jedi, which you said is a 3, and I initially said is a 5. I might move that down to 4 at this point in time.
And it'll be very interesting for me because I have not set an eye on it since the theatrical run. I have yet to rewatch it. I'm watching all of the behind-the-scenes stuff. I'm sort of doing in reverse. Like usually you go in, I want to be as spoiler-free as possible, get my first viewing and everything. This time, I'm viewing all of the supplemental stuff first, and then taking, hopefully, a more, bringing in the baggage of it. Like with Star Trek V, everybody knows my baggage with that. When I watch that now, I'm not watching what's actually playing on the screen. I'm watching everything in my head that's laying over, what's on the screen. And I'm trying to give Last Jedi that benefit.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I watched the movie at home just this week, and I haven't had a chance to watch the special features yet. I really do want to watch. Well, I want to watch the documentary, and then I want to watch the commentary, and I want to watch the isolated score version as well.
The deleted scenes hold no interest for you?
Oh yeah, sure. I'll turn those on as well. Yeah.
I will say hands down that the version of Phasma's death that was cut for what appeared in the film, it would have been like one less like red mark on the film for me if they had kept the way it originally went. It was so much better.
I think I saw that with the sound off because I think someone posted it on Twitter or something like that. But like watching it this time, I was thinking about that because there were a lot of people who were saying what you were saying, and I'm like, boy, I don't have a problem with the way that she dies in this. Same thing with, a lot of people are talking about like Luke Skywalker, a.k.a. Mark Hamill, said something in the news lately or something, or someone was, I don't know. I just read a pull quote from Twitter where he's like, you had enough time for him to drink the green milk out of the, water cow thing, but you can't have him react to Han's death or whatever.
Very powerful moment. Doesn't make sense why it was cut.
But like the way that it plays in the movie, like for one thing, as far as the milk scene is concerned, I mean, I can totally understand why that's in there because you're showing the life that he's living. I mean, that's a big character moment for me because it's showing the lengths that he's gone to, live this life or whatever.
Yes, but this is why the Han scene would have been better, and even there's a later scene, the quote-unquote third test scene, that's better because I'm fine with showing him milk the sea cow. I actually didn't have a problem. I think that is an example of the humor that worked in the film versus, some of the other humor that didn't, but then having that scene, a counterpoint of him sitting there, showing him when he's alone, crying and reacting to Han's death, shows the inner turmoil that he's going through. does that communicate later? Of course, because he comes back and blah, 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 blah. But I think it just creates a stronger character arc for him to have included that. That's what I'm saying.
I mean, like, he's such a good actor that, you know, he conveys all of that in his one line where he goes like, "Where's Han?" And you don't need anything after that. You know, you don't need.
It's
like I totally got his inner turmoil as soon as he said, "Where's Han?"
Okay, you know what? I would rather have a scene showing him crying alone than having a forced cameo of Maz Kanata by hologram, just for a couple of yucks and giggles.
No, but
to send them off to Canto Bight. You can address that by any of 100 other, and don't do that. You know that they could have done that any of 100 different ways and not even gone to Canto Bight. But that brings us back to your question, because that is specifically what I get at. And I know I'm getting animated here, but that's the thing, is Rian Johnson is a good guy. I have a feeling I'd like him if I met him. I have a feeling that, you know, it's not like I'm going to walk in a room and be like, why? I'd be like, wow, hey, you got to make a Star Wars movie. That's cool. That's great. And I loved Brick. That's awesome. Thanks, man. What I'm looking for primarily in a Star Wars director is somebody who doesn't just give moments, but gives a cohesion. And the biggest problem that I had with Last Jedi, and the reason it's a 3-star for me, is there were moments that lacked cohesion or lacked overall story purpose. And when I sit down in any film, I want, unless I'm sitting down for a David Lynch movie, because I know what I'm getting with a David Lynch movie. Okay, it's going to be bat-ass crazy. And when I sit down for a Wes Anderson movie, okay, we've got the artifice and things look fake. I get that. But with a narrative like this, a dedicated narrative, this film played more like a series of moments than a cohesive whole. So what I'm looking for in a director is somebody who can give me moments and the cohesive whole, that can give me through lines that hold it all together, so that I'm not sitting there saying, wow, I love this moment with Rey and Kylo. This is really cool. I like them connected over a thing. Oh, wow, Snoke's doing it. That's really interesting. Oh, all right. Horses. Yeah, all right. Cool. Can we get back to the stuff I care about?
Okay, I'll address that in a second, but just one last thing with the whole, you know, Luke reacting to Han's thing. I don't know if you listened to Kevin Smith's review of Last Jedi.
No.
It's amazing, but there's this one moment in there where he starts talking about like what he would have done in that scene, you know, where like after he goes, you know, where's Han? He's like, I would have had him sit down with Chewie and just have Chewie like explain the whole thing to him, tell him the whole story in Wookiee without any subtitles or whatever. And then just while you hear Chewie going like, you just like hold on Mark Hamill's face, you know, as he's like reacting to the story. And it's like, we know what Chewie's saying, but he actually understands him. And I would have loved to see that because, well, for one thing, it sounds hilarious, but also I think it would have been very effective.
I wouldn't say hilarious. I think that would actually be a great way to deal with the scene. I'd be fine with that. It's
funny because like you've never seen Chewie give a monologue before, right? So that naturally is a funny thing, right? It just is.
Well, I think it gives Chewie a great purpose in the film if he had been somebody to relay information.
Yeah, but regardless of that, anyway, as far as like the lacking cohesion or whatever, I mean, I think that's a weird thing to say about this movie because it's not like a David Lynch movie. It doesn't have lots of threads that don't go anywhere. I mean, you look at the storyline that you're talking about, and it does go to a place. You know, in the end, they fail. But these people do go on an adventure, and within that adventure, there are mini arcs and everything, just like you see in all of the other Star Wars movies. And, you know, they all have something to say about the world and about these characters and everything like that. And it is a character-building scene or sequence for everyone involved, and in the end, they fail. And I think that that's interesting. I think that that's an interesting plot thread, but it also sets up a lot of other stuff in terms of like antagonism between, Oscar Isaac and Laura Dern and everything. I mean, there is a purpose to that stuff. And even though you can say like, well, they went on this whole long subplot to do this thing and they didn't even do that thing. I mean, I think that that's kind of beside the point.
No, it's not. It's not beside the point because
it is.
No, it's not beside the point. Not at all beside the point. When you watch Black Panther, did somebody go off and do something that, in the end, ultimately didn't do anything? Like didn't produce anything at all?
Okay, then let me ask you this question: if at the end they would have succeeded, and that would have been what propelled the story into the final act, would you no longer have a problem with the stuff in the casino or the stuff with Benicio del Toro or the stuff with the horses or anything like that? Is the only problem that you have with it that it, once they get to the end, it doesn't propel the plot forward?
No, that's that's the biggest problem I have with it.
But I mean, what about the way that it propels the characters forward?
What? How does it propel the characters forward, if anything? And the thing is, it winds up you wind up having to regress characters from a point that they achieved at the end of the last film to have them serve this sort of need that you've created out of it. Like it's even the speeder thing, the speeder thing on Crate doesn't really serve any purpose except to be a cool visual. Okay, it's a cool visual. I'll give you that. But like the sense of maybe cohesion isn't a word that is the right word or something like that, but there are too many moments that did not communicate the necessary amount of relation to the main arc, didn't serve the story overall. And again, all of this stuff doesn't take away from the fact that I loved Adam Driver, but I want somebody who's going to give me those moments with Adam Driver while at the same time, if you're going to give me a side plot, if you're going to split people up the way you do in Empire Strikes Back, then have it be at the service of the greater story the way that is, the way that winds up tying everything together.
Okay, then let's talk about The Empire Strikes Back.
Okay.
Han and Leia and Chewie and 3PO go to Bespin in order to fix the Falcon so that they can get away from the Empire, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay. How many of those things happen in the end, right? And now let's look at it from the flip. They don't fix the Falcon. They don't get away from the Empire. Now let's look at it from the flip side, right? It's R2 who fixes the Falcon. But now let's look at it from the flip side.
No, actually, the hyperdrive was in fact repaired. It was just turned off. R2 didn't fix it so much as flip the light switch that made it possible for them to go to light speed.
Okay, well, regardless, okay, the point is when they left, it had nothing to do with Bespin. That I mean, I don't know, was it fixed? Whatever, it doesn't matter. But let's look at it from the other side now. Let's look at it from the other side, because I mean they lost Han in the process. He didn't get away. What
was Vader's motivation for even chasing the Falcon? What did it have to do with?
It had to do with luring Luke with
capturing Luke. Yes.
Right, capturing Luke. So Vader gets to Bespin, right? And he freezes Han, one of the most emotional scenes in the trilogy, right? Mm-hmm. Or whatever, or in all movies. He freezes Han. Why does he do that? What's his motivation? To test it out for Luke Skywalker. Mm-hmm. And he never gets to freeze Luke Skywalker. So does that?
No. See, this is what you're doing. Is you're taking my complaint about the fact that Canto Bight is a messy subplot that, if anything, goes in circles and nobody really progresses or goes anywhere with it. It just puts them. It takes a really roundabout way to get them where they were going to end up anyway. and you're instead saying, well, Vader didn't succeed in doing this. That's the same thing. No, it's not the same thing. It's not the same thing at all. It doesn't just have to do with the fact that they don't succeed. It has to do with the fact that the timeline in the entire film is out of whack. There's no time. They introduce a time lock that you're running out of fuel and all of this stuff, and then the Canto Bight stuff takes so long, and Rey's over here on this other planet, that the time lock is broken until it absolutely needs to be thrown back in there to create this slow motion chase scene.
Okay. I don't see how you could possibly complain about that when we're talking about Empire over here, which does that to the nth degree.
What time lock does it have that it breaks in Empire?
Well,
at what point do they have something where they have a stated amount of time they have left, and then you have all of this stuff going on, and you say, well, wait a minute, how long was Rey over on Octo then, and how long were they over on Canto Bight, and how long did it take them to get back over there? Because this sure seems a stretch with the amount of time you've communicated to me that you have left.
Well, they didn't communicate exactly how much time that they had left, but regardless of that, I mean, look at the way that those two storylines in Empire play fast and loose with the amount of time that it takes to tell those two stories. It's no different from what's going on in Last Jedi.
No, you and I are never going to see eye to eye on this. Is the long and the short of it here.
How long did it take Luke to train to become a Jedi?
In the end, it doesn't matter.
Oh,
because.
Okay.
Oh,
right,
okay.
Yeah. No. I'm just saying.
Because at some point did Yoda say you have to spend this specific amount of time? Are we even sure how long it takes the Falcon to run away and stuff like that? And they obviously don't have hyperdrive, so we know that it's going to take longer than what has now been, thrown in there with the JJ verse of, and I'm not complaining about that, where hyperspace is now it's like 1 second to get around places. There was always the sense, if you go back even to the original Star Wars, they were in hyperspace for a duration of time to get to Alderaan. And it took them a fair amount of time to get to Alderaan. But the thing is, it's not about nitpicking that sort of thing. You're recasting my argument into this nitpicking thing, like I'm saying they have exactly 15 hours and 33 minutes before this happens. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that it's not even playing fast and loose. It's putting it in a situation where the sense of time, these three things going on, don't seem to be occurring at the same speed as the other stuff that they're related to. That's what I'm saying. And to get back to what I want in a director, it would be somebody that would have it structured in such a way where if they introduce this sense of urgency, a time lock, then they're going to be more aware of that structure that they've set up for themselves.
Okay, I honestly don't see how what you're talking about is any different from Empire Strikes Back. But regardless of that, I really don't. But aside from the fact that they state a specific amount of time at the end, they say like we have like an hour or something like that. But otherwise, they just say we need to do this quickly. But regardless, okay, getting back to what we want out of a filmmaker thing. I mean, I guess that's a very. I guess what I'm thinking is like that's a very sort of nuts and bolts piece of criteria, Mm-hmm. Whereas like I was thinking of the question in a much broader sense. Like, do you want someone who is going to continue the story in the traditional George Lucas sense? Do you want someone who is going to change the way that movies are made in the George Lucas sense? Or do you want like an auteur who's going to do their own thing in the George Lucas sense? Or do you want just a cohesive universe built on top of what George Lucas did, but maybe not necessarily beholden to his original ideas, just so long as it does fit all together, maybe in the Marvel sense.
No, I don't want them to follow the Marvel model. My complaint about cohesion has to do specifically with this singular work. It doesn't have anything to do. I want to make sure that's clear. It has nothing to do with. And the thing is, yes, I was thinking very technically, where I want somebody with those skill sets as a director. In this sense, what I want is somebody who is going to challenge intellectually. I want somebody who's going to challenge emotionally. The only time I care about the template of a Star Wars film is when it's the episodes. Like that's the sort of thing where I'm like, okay, you're denoting this as a specific type of story. With Rogue One, I think that with less meddling, that would have been even cooler. It would have felt even better and more expansive. And I want somebody, if Rian Johnson's going to make a trilogy of his own, awesome. I want him to, put all the cards on the table and make it challenging and different. And he doesn't need to use wipes, and he can use lap dissolves if he wants to, and he can use all of those sorts of things. So, Lucas himself broke his own mold and, changed things around. If anything, what I would ultimately look for is somebody who has all I really, really bare bones care about is somebody that has a sense of visual storytelling the same way that Lucas did. And the only reason I bring up Lucas's name isn't because he's the creator of Star Wars, but because of the fact that I can turn the sound off and know exactly what he's conveying to me, while at the same time, you look at something like the end of Revenge of the Sith or certain key sequences throughout the films, there's this beautiful sense of editing and flow that verges on the abstract but still gets you there and is, a beautiful sort of thing. Does that make sense? Is that in line with what you're looking for in a director? Or?
I mean, yeah, I guess. I mean, I think the only thing that, to me anyway, that Last Jedi does not accomplish in that set of criteria is that it's an episode number. And I don't personally, care about that at all, because, I think that there's a million ways to get to, the end of the story. And I think that it does fit perfectly fine within that, sort of like established storytelling structure or whatever. But, I guess I'm looking for similar things. And I think that in a lot of ways, even though I don't think it's the best of the new movies, I do think that Last Jedi succeeds at most of those things in a way that the other movies don't.
Well, this is what I'll say. This is the sort of skill that I wish that Rian Johnson had indulged in more. That there is an aspect of him that is exactly what I would be looking for in a director. Instead of feeling the need to have gone epic and have the Canto Bight scene and have the battle on Crate at the scale that it was supposed to be at and everything, the place where Last Jedi excels is in the small character moments. I would have loved it if that had just been indulged. If it had just been, if they had said, instead of any big set piece, except for maybe, a lightsaber battle like they have, let's just keep it small. Let's have it people talking to people instead of anything big. I think that if you boil it down and you look only at, because I'm not one of those people that is going to harp on where he took Luke. I don't necessarily agree with where he took Luke, but I think it spurs some interesting discussions. There are choices along the way that I disagree with, but whatever. That's neither here nor there in the end, so long as the discussion is interesting and maybe there's this that I didn't see or something like that. But if you were to boil Last Jedi down, I think Rian Johnson's the perfect type of director to give you a Star Wars film that is intimate, that is up close, and says, we're going to take a breath from feeling obligated to show you a huge battle, and instead, or even, a bunch of aliens in a bar, and just say we're gonna focus on sort of the way Star Trek in its finer moments in the original series movies did. We're gonna focus on Kirk, Spock, and McCoy. Everything else is going around, but that's where the focus was. And if it had kept its focus on that stuff, I think it would have been an absolutely superior work. And that's the type of stuff that recommends Rian Johnson to me for a Star Wars film.
I mean, it may have been, but again, like that's something which, for better or worse, we're never going to see, especially in an episode movie, because, those set pieces are a part of it, right? I mean, like, for years I've been saying, like, let's get a Star Wars movie without any lightsabers in it. It's never going to happen. Well, maybe Solo, we'll see, but it's never going to happen because that's what people think of when they think of Star Wars. And I will say that, whether or not they were extraneous, which I don't think that they were, like the set pieces in this I thought were outstanding. I mean, that lightsaber battle in the throne room was
fantastic. Highlight of the film.
And the same thing with the crate battle, for sure. All the stuff in space as well. I mean, I wasn't super into the horse scene, but again, I think that that's a character moment like you're talking about. I think that definitely develops those characters for sure, and says something about the larger universe that we're seeing, which is always cool to see, like another side of this galaxy, right? So, I mean, I don't know. I guess I don't really think that this movie fails in that regard,
As far as I'm concerned, it's an unresolvable sort of thing, because at the end it comes down to just the same sort of disagreement. And this is the thing that sort of irks me with like the online, arguments. Like, I don't get into any discussions online whatsoever about The Last Jedi, because it's so toxic, not because the haters and not because the lovers, but simply because everybody talks past each other. You and me were having, and yeah, it's been spirited and stuff like that. It's an ongoing discussion, but you and me can sit here and have this discussion. But like Last Jedi, it's just never going to resolve. I mean, there are people who, I've spent 20 years getting hammered, called stupid on occasion for liking the prequels, right? For loving the prequels. Literal words, stupid, foolish, fanboy, hurled at me for the last couple of decades. Okay, yeah.
You are a fanboy. Yeah, I mean, the fanboy thing you can admit to. No?
I honestly don't. Not the way I define fanboy.
Okay. I mean, I think that we're all fanboys and girls here. I don't know.
See, for me, a fanboy is going to be somebody who reads all the ancillary material and then gets upset because Boba Fett's backstory doesn't match up with Attack of the Clones. Whereas I see Boba Fett's backstory change at the drop of a hat in Attack of the Clones, and I'm like, awesome, cool, good. I don't care about those books. That's stuff to occupy me while I'm waiting for the movie, you know?
All right.
So for me, a fanboy is somebody that's like, cataloging everything that happened in, whether it's Aftermath or Bloodline or Legends of Luke Skywalker, and saying, well, technically what happens in episode 8 doesn't jibe with what's said on page 267. Right? I don't care. That's whatever. That's fanboy territory.
Okay. All right.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I guess, yeah. But you were going to make a point there. I don't know what it was.
I don't know what it was anymore either. But I mean, just that the Last Jedi argument just isn't going to resolve. Like, you and me, we don't see eye to eye on this one complaint that I have about it, and that's fine. That's cool. There are plenty of things that I love where, you and I would never see eye to eye on what makes me love it. And that's cool. That's fine. I think that Last Jedi, I think, speaking to the cohesion thing, Last Jedi feels like two good movies that were mushed together into a movie that wasn't as good as it could have been. And that is just how it's, that's just how I'm always going to feel about it when I see it. Like when I see it for what will only be the third time, when I do watch it, I'm going to be very interested in my reaction. Am I going to have some sort of moment where I've had enough time to sort of like acclimate it that I look at different things in the Canto Bight plot line or stuff like that? But I mean, of the directors who have been hired, is anybody jumping out at you as, because it seems like, a third of Hollywood has a Star Wars project upcoming. Is there anybody that jumps out at you where you're like, oh, yes, that's going to give me what I'm looking for?
Well, I mean, it's interesting because, like, I can tell you, like, Force Awakens is my favorite of the three so far, and the reason for that is because I do think it's the most skillfully made, and, as I've said on many occasions, like, J.J. Abrams is one of my favorite directors, so I know that he's going to give me exactly what I want. But at the same time, I kind of want someone to give me something that I don't know that I want. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. So you wouldn't be thrilled with the Jon Favreau hiring?
Well, I'm excited about the Jon Favreau hiring because he's a really good filmmaker,
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I mean, but it's not like I'm not like, oh yeah, I mean, to be honest, I think that Rian Johnson has come closest because it is so outside of the box in a lot of ways, and it does feel more like just a movie and less like Star Wars than anything else. It does not feel like it's playing to the fanboys, for example, if you want to say that or whatever. It feels like he's making a legit movie that happens to be a Star Wars movie,
So here's a question, though, isn't that more in the Star Trek mold? Like, what is it that sets Star Wars apart as a franchise if it loses that thing that was some sort of identifier for it in terms of the way the stories are told or the way that they're edited or anything like that? If it loses all of those things, what makes it any more appealing or any different from a Marvel movie or even a DC movie or any other franchise that comes along? Doesn't it just reduce itself to just another franchise?
Well, I think there's two things there. One, okay, I think the reason why Star Wars has not had a large amount of sort of like unique pieces is because Lucas has done everything himself, right? So, now we're getting into the realm where Lucas isn't doing that stuff. And because of that, things are starting to get different. And people are kind of like testing the waters to figure out how different you can make it and still keep it Star Wars or whatever. And I'm all for, testing those limits. And and in some ways you could say like it doesn't make it any different from Star Trek or DC or Marvel or whatever. What I think makes it different, why this is not, and the argument could be made, and probably if you're going to look at it objectively, you would say, yeah, it is just another franchise, okay. So maybe I shouldn't get any more excited about the new Star Wars movie than I am about the new Marvel movie or whatever, because it is a mixed bag, and maybe we shouldn't be so precious about it. But I think the difference, to me anyway, and I think the difference to the people making these movies, the exception being Ron Howard, whatever, is that these are movies which everyone who's making them grew up on. Not that they're fanboys, if we want to use that as a derogatory term or whatever, but they're just people who make movies. They're artists who were inspired by this particular artist, and now they get a shot at this property,
and that's cool.
Yeah, and that's the difference. I mean, like, because of that, because just like I have an emotional connection to these movies when I see Han on screen or whatever, and I'm sort of like overcome with joy and everything, and it means all sorts of stuff in terms of like the passage of time, on screen and in my life and everything like that. It's like I imagine that same sort of passion, and you hear stories about it, that same sort of passion is being sort of like experienced or is being brought to these movies by these filmmakers. And I think that usually will result in better art.
I mean, that's the thing, is like, it is what it is. And what I want going forward as well is that as they try new things, I want the freedom to be critical of it. I think that the trap that has happened is that, because I would say that the people who have most vociferously defended The Last Jedi have set this playing field where the message that seems to be coming across is you have to let go of your criticism because you're being too precious about Star Wars. But at the same time, you can't criticize because Star Wars is precious. And it's like, that I think is just a trap. I think that's why I don't participate in the online discussions. I'm just not walking into that wood chipper, man.
I don't know. That's different from what I'm seeing. What I'm seeing really is, and there really does seem to be this division. And I know that we've talked about it before, but I really see this as sort of, and I was surprised by the fan reaction, to be quite honest. Like, people are like, I mean, I know I still don't understand what people are upset about in terms of the characterization of Luke. Like, I literally, and not just like I've heard the criticism and I think they're wrong. Like, I literally could not tell you what people are complaining about. I have absolutely no idea. But regardless,
I could
of
steer
that,
you to several outlets where my specific complaints are out there.
I'm not going to. I kind of don't want to hear them, to be honest.
It's good that you're open to dialogue.
Just like you don't want to engage, whatever. Like with the because there is that sort of like, because we saw it like coming out of the theater, and I mean in a very similar way that we experienced that with the prequels. It's a similar reaction.
But that's the thing, is I want the people who are defending it and getting really, really bent out of shape about people who are being critical about it. I think another reason I don't participate is I'm feeling a little bit of Schadenfreude, or Schadenfreude, however you want to pronounce it, because quite frankly, like, I'm the guy standing on the sidelines who's retired from these fights, and I'm watching people chew each other apart, and I'm like, knock yourselves out. Have fun. I went through this.
Like, I'm not, like, it's not like I see someone criticizing Last Jedi and I'm like, screw you. You're what's wrong with the world. I'm just like, that's a weird opinion to have. I do not get it, But it's not like I'm going to, whatever. But this is what I'm seeing, though, right? I'm seeing like fans who are somehow feel that Last Jedi is like a betrayal, and in a very similar way that fans felt about the prequels. And then I see, and this is where the flip side of it is, I think. I see a lot of people, and this goes to what you were saying at first, a lot of people who are like, don't be precious about Star Wars. It doesn't need to fit into this box. It can still, do something new and be Star Wars too, or whatever. And it's a good movie, and that's all that really counts is that it's a good movie, and that's what it is. Like, the people who I see saying that, the people who I see reacting in that way are the people who are not the hardcore fans, the people who are casually watching this and who are just like, this movie's good, like, not like, well, how does it fit into, the overall Skywalker saga? They're like, what? This is episode what? It didn't say on the poster, They're just like, this is a good movie. And like, that's different from like what happened with the prequels, because you did have the fans who felt betrayed, but then you also had the people on the outside saying like, this is garbage, and then the fans who did like it are like, but it's Star Wars, you know. So I mean, I don't know. That's the difference there. I don't see like people saying like, this is Star Wars, that means you have to like it. I saw that with the prequels. I think I'm actually kind of guilty with that with the prequels, but I'm not seeing that here.
This is definitely a difference in perception and anecdotal experience then, because I have seen that. I've seen people literally call people who are critical of The Last Jedi as the darkness that needs to be driven out by the light. Okay, if you want to get melodramatic about a film, I think you take the cake on that. Like, seriously, take a victory lap and high five everybody because you just won that race.
No, that's dumb.
Yes, it is, but it is definitely an anecdotal thing. But even more so, I have to stress. I have to like bold, put it header 1 font on a website somewhere, that sort of thing. Put it up there. I promise you that the criticisms I'm throwing at it are not rooted in the fact that it's a Star Wars film. No. I'm simply being as critical of any film that I would, and it happens to be a Star Wars film.
No, and there is that, and that's fine, but I think that most of the criticism that I'm hearing is, well, there are a couple things. There's a huge amount of, I've seen this multiple times from multiple people where they're like, Rose is the worst character in the history of Star Wars. There's that, which I don't understand that at all. But then there's also like the whole like they destroyed the character of Luke. Like they ruined it. See, look, even Mark Hamill thinks that they destroyed the character of Luke. Like there's a lot of that. And like that's the stuff where I'm just like, what I don't understand what you guys are talking about at all. Well, I understand what you're talking about. I disagree with it, but I understand it at least.
I would say with the complaints about Luke, I think that sometimes people are out there who struggle for the right words about why they don't like what happened with him. And I think that is something where, if you want to blame social media or whatever, yell at people on your lawn or something, but like it is, I think, something where it's impossible to just have a discussion when you're in a forum where the amount of characters you're granted are limited. Like you would have to type out the blog post and like put it as a series of like 400 tweets on a thread, right? Yeah. Or post something on Facebook that nobody's going to read, or post a picture on Instagram that nobody's going to read, that sort of thing. Nobody cares about the because, and then people want to, I think, anticipate the being cut off, and so they just throw it out there as fast. Does that mean that there aren't people out there who are completely unreasonable? No, it doesn't mean that. It just means, I think, that it's like this worldwide episode of like Crossfire on CNN or something like that, where everybody's just yelling at each other, and nobody's actually listening or being cool with the fact. Like, even if somebody were to come to me, and maybe this is just my battle scars from the prequels and stuff like that, but like if somebody today were to come to me and say, you're stupid for not liking The Last Jedi, my reaction would not even be to get angry. It would be, okay.
Yeah, no, I mean, all right. I totally agree with that. I don't, well, because I mean, I've always thought that was, I don't know. People get sensitive when you disagree with them about movies, and I don't understand it. I think what we brush on is the fact that it is something that is a significant, like, people identify with Star Wars, and they have come to take a lot of meaning from Star Wars, and so something that it does feel personal for a lot of people when something is done that they don't agree with Star Wars, which is why there's been strong reaction to everything that's been released since 1999.
It doesn't matter whether it's a prequel, whether it's the Clone Wars, whether it's Rebels, whether it's the Last Jedi, whether it's the Force Awakens, whether it's Rogue One, whether it's the upcoming Solo. There is that component where people do feel a great sense of personal identification with these characters, and it's like I struggle to think, but like if they took, you know what? Here, I'll grab a Star Trek example. Bill Shatner had a huge problem with the way Nick Meyer took his character at the beginning of Star Trek VI, because remember at the beginning when he says "Let them die." He had argued against that. He said that was too far for Kirk, and he wanted to show a moment of him, having a moment of like realizing what he said and showing regret visually. And if you look at that scene, you can actually see like when it cuts back to him, that Meyer has cut out a reaction shot from him after he says, "Let them die." And that was specifically so that the character would have an arc sort of thing. But I mean, it's like, I say all that just to say that it's not uncommon, because Shatner was like, Kirk can have all of these problems, but don't make him that brutal. I don't agree with Kirk going that far with it, Yeah,
and what you're saying, I think, is like the thing that I want out of these Star Wars movies, in a sense. Like, you're talking about how like every thing that says Star Wars since 1999 has had a strong reaction to it because it's so personal to the people watching. And I think that's true to some extent. Everyone loved the original trilogy. Everyone's on the same page about that. You won't really find anyone who disagrees with the original trilogy being awesome. You'll find people who like the prequels more and all this other stuff, but you won't find anyone who disagrees about the original trilogy. And because of that, it's like we were all on the same team, and now ever since 1999 we've been breaking off into different factions, like the Klingon Empire and Discovery or whatever. And now there's all this infighting, and trying to figure out where we all stand post Phantom Menace, with every little incarnation of Star Wars. And what that shows more than anything is that while we all loved the original trilogy, we loved it for different reasons. And that's why I'm so excited about this new generation of filmmakers coming in and making their own Star Wars movies, because while everyone loved and was inspired by Star Wars, they all loved it for different reasons and were inspired by different things. And I want to see how they manifest the franchise, because I really do think that it will reflect on what the original trilogy is. Even if it's something which you disagree with, or it's not your Star Wars, it's somebody's Star Wars, and that will sort of shine a new light on the Star Wars which exists now. So that's what I'm looking for. That's what I want, and that's what I think Rian Johnson in particular brought. So, yeah, I would have loved to have seen what Miller and Lord brought.
Be interesting, wouldn't it?
Yep. But
there'll be, yeah. Hey, everybody saddle up, because we're going to be going through this again at the end of May. So, woo!
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, as always, it's always interesting when we go down this road, for sure. And it's, I always find it extremely stimulating to talk to you about this stuff, because there are points on which you and I very much agree, and then there are just those points where you and I are just, opposite ends. But isn't that the nature of every human relationship out there? Even the people that we're married to, there are going to be things that we just don't see eye to eye on. But if there's something that somebody has agreed with you on or disagreed with you on, where can they find you online?
You can find me on Twitter at Mumbles3K, and you can also find me doing another podcast called Film Damage on filmdamagepod.com, or also iTunes or wherever, where we take a look at movies from the perspective of the booth. We do a lot of talk about film projection over there. So, yeah, head on over to filmdamagepod.com and check it out.
Do yourself a favor and listen. It's it's a lot of fun. You can find me online. I am Kessel Junkie. You can also find me right here on the network co-hosting Aggressive Negotiations with Matthew Rushing. And you can find me on my original podcasting gig co-hosting Words with Nerds with my pal Craig. So with all of that said, thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time on Great Shot Kid.
Join the revolution. Join the Nerd Party.